Finrod, played by Will Fletcher, gives some sibling knowledge to his younger sister, but when battle breaks out against the fallen Vala Morgoth, Finrod is on the quest for Sauron, the villain's senior lieutenant. According to Galadriel, Sauron outmaneuvered Finrod and landed the first blow. Following the War of Wrath, his corpse was discovered, with deep claw marks in Sauron's personal mark. Galadriel, played by Morfydd Clark, takes her brother's sword and inherits his will, having a burning ambition to defeat Sauron herself. This small but significant part in The Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, hardly touches the surface of Tolkien's original character. Much more floats beneath Finrod's iceberg, while the Amazon makes big alterations to Galadriel's brother's death. What more do we know about this great First Age figure? The Rings of Power is a shortened retelling of how the elves left Valinor for Middle-earth. Instead of a noble journey to destroy Morgoth and revenge the two trees of Valinor, the Oldor clan was headed by their king, Fanor, who wanted to regain the Silmarils stolen by Morgoth at the same time as his lumberjack antics. This exodus, known as the Flight of the Oldor, was not in line with the Valar's intent, and it also saw Fanor lead his troops in perpetrating atrocities against their own people. Although Finrod and Galadriel both joined this expedition from Valinor to Middle-earth, it was more to avoid leaving their people than to agree with Fanor. After learning of Fanor's brutal betrayal, their father would quit the quest and return to Valinor, leaving Finrod and Galadriel to go on to Middle-earth. Another sad element that the Rings of Power glosses over is Finrod's abandonment of his one true love, Amory, in Valinor. The history lesson in the Rings of Power Episode 1 gives the notion that Finrod rode from Valinor to Middle-earth with the express purpose of destroying Sauron. However, in J.R.R. Tolkien's mythology, Finrod plays a considerably greater part in the early history of Middle-earth, and his deeds have far-reaching implications in both the Rings of Power and the Lord of the Rings. To begin with, Finrod founded the first Minas Tirith. After serving as a watchtower against Morgoth for several decades, Minas Tirith was overrun by Sauron, who used the stronghold as a base of operations when Mordor was still but a glimmer in his flaming eye. Minas Tirith is far further north than its Third Age Gondor equivalent. Finrod had already gone on to more challenging endeavors by the time Minas Tirith was destroyed. The Vala Ulmo came to Finrod and revealed to the elf a secret network of underground tunnels, since Finrod never deserted the Valar like that annoying Fanor. Finrod would create Nargothrond, a massive metropolis that was nearly impenetrable, and over which he reigned as king, fully hidden from Morgoth's view. To begin with, Finrod built the first Minas Tirith. The stronghold of Minas Tirith, far more northerly than its Third Age Gondor counterpart, served as a watchtower against Morgoth for several decades before Sauron invaded and turned it into a base of operations while Mordor was still only a glimmer in his flaming eye. Finrod had already moved on to bigger things by the time Minas Tirith fell. Finrod was shown a secret network of underground tunnels by the Vala Ulmo, since the elf never abandoned the Valar as that annoying Fanor did. Here, Finrod would construct the enormous, nearly impenetrable city of Nargothrond, which he would rule over as king, completely hidden from Morgoth's view. Both Minas Tirith and Nargothrond perished before the Second Age of the Rings of Power. The relationships he formed along the road, rather than the fortresses he established, were what determined Finrod's power in Middle-earth. In J.R.R. Tolkien's First Age, workable alliances were formed between these opposing species, which resulted in far less fighting between elves and dwarves than in the Rings of Power and the Lord of the Rings. Finrod was one of the friendliest collaborators. He helped build Nargothrond with dwarven assistance and generously compensated his harry workers. The Lord of the Rings still makes reference to Finrod's cordial relationship with the dwarves, as Gimli sings of great monarchs in Nargothrond during the Fellowship of the Ring. Gimli's respect for Finrod's sister, the Lady Galadriel, during his journey to Lothlorien is subtly influenced by this past. Only Finrod's relationships with the men of Middle-earth, whom he came into contact with purely by accident, surpass these diplomatic attempts with the dwarves. Finrod shared his wisdom with these humans, became fluent in their language, adopted their practices, and assisted in mending a split with the neighborhood Green Elves. Finrod became particularly close to the House of Bor and extended an invitation to Bor to live out the remainder of his days in Nargothrond. The House of Bor is one of three houses that settled on Menor in the Second Age, and this connection again proves to be important in subsequent tales. Bor's descendants trace all the way through to Elendil and Isildur, and then, of course, the Lord of the Rings Aragorn. In the Rings of Power, Galadriel, played by Morfydd Clark, is quite clear about how her brother Finrod died. Finrod battled the Lord, and the Lord triumphed. His death, as described by J.R.R. Tolkien in the Silmarillion is noticeably different from what Amazon does in the live-action Finrod, which is arguably the largest alteration. A series of significant wars between Morgoth and the elves, leading up to the decisive War of Wrath, characterized Tolkien's First Age. One of the most notable of these battles, the Dagger Bragollach, left many elves dead. If Barahir, a member of the House of Bor, had not intervened to save Finrod, he would have been one of those dead. Naturally, the noble Finrod gave his ring to Barahir as a vow of friendship and an oath, and this ring, which represents the tie between men and elves, would be passed down to Aragorn, who gave it to his beloved Arwen. Barahir's son invokes Finrod's oath even though Barahir himself does not. Going above and beyond for parental approval, Beren journeyed to Nargothrond and asked Finrod to keep his word by joining the mission in order to satisfy the father of his fiancée, the elf princess Althene, who was also his girlfriend. Only then would Galadriel's brother publicly pursue Sauron, not to kill him but rather to steal one of the legendary gems belonging to Fëanor and win his buddy a wife. Tragically, Beren and Finrod's company were captured by Sauron and taken to the latter's old watchtower of Minas Tirith, now under the Dark Lord's command. It was here as a prisoner that Finrod gave his life to protect Beren. The Rings of Power change Finrod's journey from one of friendship to one of revenge, ostensibly to give Galadriel, played by Morfydd Clark, a more compelling reason to find Sauron. Galadriel's vow to purge Middle-earth of all evil is explored in depth in the Rings of Power episodes 1 and 2, and the loss of her elder brother serves as a rationale for her insatiable inner fire. There's no denying Finrod becomes a plot device for his sister rather than a character in his own right. Whether Finrod's whole background needs to be erased in order to achieve that will be up to the Rings of Power's audience to determine. The majority of J.R.R. Tolkien's writings on the relationship between Finrod and Galadriel as siblings deal with their adulthood, although it is obvious that the two remained close since Galadriel frequently traveled to Nargothrond to see her brother. According to Tolkien, Galadriel and Finrod shared a special bond, and the Rings of Power follow suit by basically deleting the other two brothers. The mythology of the Lord of the Rings canonizes a brother and sister relationship, yet Galadriel has never actively sought retribution. Galadriel never set out to kill Sauron or the forces of evil. She was still proud that Finrod kept his word to Barahir, and the incident almost certainly made her hatred for them even stronger. The Rings of Power depicts Finrod and Galadriel as akin to a human sibling dynamic, with the big brother watching out for the little sister. Though not necessarily a contradiction, Tolkien wrote family relationships between elves with a more formal tone, and because of their immortality. The concepts of big brother and little sister were often less pronounced than the Rings of Power's flashback implies. This distinctly human depiction of sibling love is likely designed to make the personal journey of Morfydd Clark's character more relatable as she guns relentlessly for Sauron's head. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to comment, subscribe and give us a like.